The elevator doors slid open on the 42nd floor, and Emma Carter stepped into the marble lobby of Vincenzo Holdings, with her heart hammering against her ribs. She'd applied makeup, layers of it, concealer, foundation, powder. She'd practiced her smile in the bathroom mirror 3 times before leaving her apartment, forcing her lips to curve upward, even though the left side of her face throbbed with every movement. It would be fine. She'd get to her desk, she'd keep her head down, she'd make it through the day. Nobody needed to know what Derek had done last night. The receptionist glanced up as Emma passed, and her polite smile faltered. Just for a second. Just long enough for Emma's stomach to drop. "Morning, Sophie," Emma said, her voice artificially bright. Sophie's eyes lingered on Emma's face, specifically on the area beneath her left eye, where the makeup sat just a shade too thick, a shade too desperately applied. "Morning," she replied slowly. Emma walked faster, her heels clicking against the polished floor. She could feel Sophie's gaze following her all the way to the hallway that led to the executive offices. The back of her neck burned. She'd thought she'd covered it well enough. She'd been so careful. She rounded the corner and nearly collided with Marcus, one of the security personnel who always stood outside the big corner office. His expression shifted the moment he saw her, his jaw tightening. "Ms. Carter," he said, and there was something in his tone that made her want to turn around and run. "Morning, Marcus." She tried to slip past him, but he moved almost imperceptibly, just enough to make her pause. "He's looking for you." The words sent ice through her veins. He. There was only one he in this building who mattered. Only one man whose attention could make seasoned businessmen sweat and competitors flee the city entirely. Adrian Vincenzo. Her boss. The man who'd built an empire that straddled the line between legitimate business and something far darker. The man whose name was whispered in boardrooms and back alleys with equal measures of respect and fear. The man who'd hired her 6 months ago to handle his private accounts, who paid her 3 times what she'd made at her previous firm, who expected perfection and got it. The man whose steel-gray eyes seemed to see straight through every wall she'd ever built. "I'll just get settled at my desk first," Emma said, attempting to move past Marcus again. This time, he didn't budge. He said immediately. Her throat went dry. She nodded, unable to form words, and Marcus knocked once on the heavy oak door before pushing it open. The office was enormous, all dark wood and floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. Adrian sat behind his desk, his attention on a document in front of him, his dark hair perfectly styled, his charcoal suit fitted to perfection. He didn't look up as she entered. "Close the door," he said, his voice low and controlled. Emma did. Her hands were shaking. She clasped them together in front of her, trying to still the tremor. "Come here." She walked forward on unsteady legs, stopping several feet from his desk. He still hadn't looked at her. He was reading something, his expression unreadable. One hand resting on the desktop, while the other held a pen he was tapping in a slow, methodical rhythm. Tap, tap, tap. The sound echoed in the silence. Then he lifted his gaze, and everything inside Emma went very still. His eyes locked onto her face. For 3 seconds, maybe 4, he simply stared. His expression didn't change. Not a single muscle moved. But something in his gaze shifted. Something dark and cold and absolutely terrifying sliding into place behind those gray eyes. "Come closer," he said quietly. "Mr. Vincenzo, I can explain." "Closer." She took 2 steps forward. Her pulse was racing so fast she felt dizzy. Adrian stood, the movement fluid and controlled, and walked around the desk. He was tall, well over 6 feet, and as he approached her, Emma had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. He stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, expensive and subtle. His hand came up, and she flinched before she could stop herself. He froze, his jaw clenching. Then, very slowly, very carefully, he reached out and touched her chin, tilting her face toward the light from the windows. "Who did this to you?" His voice was so soft, almost gentle. But underneath it, Emma heard something else. Something that sounded like barely restrained violence. "I fell," she whispered. "Yesterday I tripped on my apartment stairs and... Emma!" He said her name like a warning. "Don't lie to me." Tears pricked at her eyes. She blinked them back furiously. "It's nothing. I'm fine. I just need to get to work. I have those reports you wanted. Who did this?" His thumb brushed just below the bruise. So gently it shouldn't have hurt, but she still winced. The makeup she'd applied so carefully was probably smudging under his touch, revealing the full extent of the damage. Purple and black, spreading from beneath her eye, down to her cheekbone. "My ex," she finally said, the words barely audible. "Derek. But it's handled. I ended things. It won't happen again." Adrian's hand dropped from her face. He took a step back, and for a moment Emma thought he was going to dismiss her, tell her to go to her desk and get to work. Instead, he walked to the windows, his back to her, his hands sliding into his pockets. "How long?" This was the first time he actually... She stopped, swallowed. "The first time he hit me." "How long have you been afraid of him?" The question cut through her like a blade, because he was right. She'd been afraid for months. Afraid of Derek's temper, his jealousy, the way he'd started showing up at her apartment unannounced, the increasingly aggressive texts when she didn't respond fast enough. "A while?" she admitted. Adrian turned to face her, and the expression on his face made her breath catch. She'd seen him angry before. She'd watched him destroy a competitor's business deal with 3 phone calls. Had seen him reduce a man to tears during a negotiation. But this was different. This was personal. Where does he live? "Mr. Vincenzo, where does he live?" "I can't tell you that." Her voice shook. "Whatever you're thinking, please don't. I don't want any trouble. I'll handle this myself. I'll get a restraining order. A restraining order." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "A piece of paper. That's your plan to stop a man who's already put his hands on you? It's better than whatever you're planning." The words came out sharper than she intended, and she immediately regretted them. You didn't speak to Adrian Vincenzo like that. You didn't challenge him, but instead of getting angry, he simply studied her, his head tilting slightly to one side. "You think you know what I'm planning? I know your reputation. Do you?" It wasn't a question. He walked toward her again, slowly, and Emma fought the urge to back away. "What do you know about me, Emma? I know you're dangerous. I know people don't cross you. I know that men who betray you tend to disappear. And yet, you came to work today. Knowing all of that, knowing I'd see this." He gestured to her face. "Why?" "Because I need this job. Because I can't afford to lose your trust. Because even though you terrify me, you've never once made me feel unsafe." She couldn't say any of that. Instead, she said, "Because I'm professional." Something flickered across his face. Respect, maybe. Or amusement. "Go to your desk. Take the day to rest. I'll have Marcus drive you home." "I don't need... That wasn't a request." She nodded, relief and frustration warring inside her. At least he wasn't going to fire her. At least she still had her job. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her at the door. "Emma." She looked back. "Give me his address." "No. I'm not asking. And I'm not telling you." She met his gaze, refusing to look away, even though every instinct screamed at her to submit, to give him what he wanted. "Please don't do this. Please just let it go." For a long moment he said nothing. Then he nodded once, sharply. "Go home." She fled. But as the elevator descended and her heart rate slowly returned to normal, Emma realized something that made her blood run cold. She hadn't told him Derek's last name. She hadn't told him where Derek worked or what he looked like, or anything beyond his first name. And yet, when Adrian had asked for his address, he'd sounded like a man who already had ways of finding it. Emma didn't sleep that night. She lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, her phone on the nightstand within reach. Derek had texted her 17 times since yesterday. Each message had been worse than the last, progressing from apologies to anger to threats. You can't just leave me. I know where you work. You think you're better than me now? With your fancy job and your rich boss? I'll come to your office. I'll make a scene. See how your boss likes that. She should have blocked his number. Should have done it months ago. But some part of her kept hoping he'd just go away, that he'd lose interest and move on to someone else. Her phone buzzed. Another text. Answer me, Emma. Her hands shook as she reached for it. She should call the police. She should do something. But what? Tell them her ex-boyfriend was sending her threatening messages? They'd tell her to get a restraining order. And Derek would laugh at that. He'd already told her what he thought of the legal system. The phone buzzed again. Last chance. She turned it off, pulled her blanket up to her chin, tried to convince herself that morning would come and everything would be fine. At 3 a.m., she heard something outside her apartment door. Footsteps. Heavy ones. Then silence. Her heart stopped. She held her breath, straining to hear. Nothing. Maybe she'd imagined it. Maybe it was just a neighbor coming home late. Maybe... Her phone, still turned off on the nightstand, suddenly lit up with an incoming call. That wasn't possible. The phone was off. With shaking hands, she picked it up. The screen showed an unknown number, but the phone was ringing despite being powered down. This didn't make sense. This couldn't be happening. She answered it. Don't open your door. Adrian's voice, low and commanding. Stay away from the windows. Do you understand me? How did you... The phone was off. Emma. Do you understand me? Yes, she whispered. Good girl. This will be over soon. The line went dead. She sat frozen in her bed, her mind racing. How had he called her on a phone that was turned off? How did he know something was wrong? How did he know she needed help? Outside her door, she heard voices. Male voices. One of them was Derek's, raised and angry. I know she's in there! Emma, open this door! Another voice, calmer, unfamiliar. You need to leave. Now. Who the hell are you? You can't tell me what to do. That's my girlfriend in there. Ex-girlfriend, the calm voice corrected. And you have 3 seconds to walk away before this becomes a problem for you. Are you threatening me? I'm giving you a choice. Emma crept to her door, pressing her ear against it. Her whole body was shaking. I'm not going anywhere, Derek snarled. Emma, I swear to God, if you don't open this door. The sound that followed was sudden and brutal. A thud, a grunt of pain. Then silence. Take him, the calm voice said. Boss wants him alive, for now. There were footsteps, shuffling. The sound of something heavy being dragged down the hallway. Then nothing. Emma stood at her door for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Finally, she heard a soft knock. Ms. Carter, it's Marcus. You can open the door now. She recognized his voice. Relief flooded through her, and she fumbled with the locks, pulling the door open. Marcus stood in the hallway, looking completely composed, despite the fact that he'd apparently just dragged her ex-boyfriend away. Behind him, the hallway was empty. No sign of Derek, no sign of a struggle. Are you all right? Marcus asked. What did you do with him? Removed a threat, Mr. Vincenzo's orders. He held out a phone. Not hers, a different one, sleek and expensive-looking. He wants you to keep this with you. It has his direct number programmed in, first contact. Emma took the phone with numb fingers. Where's Derek? Somewhere he can't hurt you. Is he... She couldn't finish the question. Alive, Marcus assured her. For now, that depends on him. I didn't want this. I didn't ask for any of this. Marcus's expression softened slightly. Mr. Vincenzo doesn't wait to be asked, not when it comes to people under his protection. I'm not under his protection. I'm his employee. In his world, Ms. Carter, those are the same thing. He stepped back. I'll be outside your building for the rest of the night. You're safe. Try to get some sleep. He turned and walked away, leaving Emma standing in her doorway, holding a phone she didn't ask for, protected by a man she was terrified of, from a threat she'd wanted to handle herself. She looked down at the phone. The screen lit up at her touch, showing a single contact saved. AV. Her thumb hovered over it for a long moment before she pressed call. He answered on the first ring. Emma. You can't do this, she said, her voice breaking. You can't just make decisions for me. You can't just make people disappear because they hurt you. Yes, I can. And I will. That's not your choice to make. It became my choice the moment you walked into my office this morning with his mark on your face. His voice was still calm, but she could hear the steel underneath. Do you understand what you are to me? She didn't know how to answer that. Didn't know what he meant. You're mine, he continued, and the possessiveness in his tone sent heat through her entire body. My employee, my responsibility, mine to protect. And I protect what's mine, Emma. Always. I'm not a possession. No, you're far more valuable than that. He paused. Derek is currently having a conversation with some associates of mine. He's being given a very simple choice. Leave the city by dawn and never contact you again, or refuse and face consequences he won't enjoy. And if he refuses, then he's a fool, and the world is better off without fools. The cold certainty in his voice should have horrified her. Instead, some dark part of her that she didn't want to acknowledge felt protected, safe. I don't want you to kill anyone for me, she whispered. Then pray he makes the smart choice. Another pause. Get some sleep, Emma. You're taking tomorrow off as well. I'll see you Monday. Mr. Vincenzo. Adrian. When it's just us, call me Adrian. The intimacy of it made her breath catch. Adrian, she tried, the name feeling strange on her tongue. Thank you, for tonight. But please don't do this again. I can't promise that. Why not? Because now that I know someone dared to touch you, the only promise I can make is that it will never happen again. Whatever that takes. Do you understand? She did. That was the terrifying part. She understood exactly what he was saying, what he was offering. Protection that came with a price. Safety wrapped in violence. A cage made of good intentions and deadly consequences. I understand, she said softly. Good. Sleep well, Emma. You're safe now. He hung up. Emma stood in her apartment, holding a phone that wasn't hers, protected by men she didn't know, because of a man whose darkness should have sent her running. Instead, for the first time in months, she felt safe. She crawled back into bed, and, impossibly, she slept. Monday morning arrived with autumn rain and gray skies. Emma dressed carefully in a navy blue suit, applied minimal makeup to her healing bruise, which had faded to a yellowing purple, and carried the phone Adrian had given her in her purse alongside her own. The office felt different when she arrived. Sophie smiled at her, genuinely this time, with no hidden concern in her eyes. Marcus nodded as she passed. Other employees she barely knew greeted her warmly. It was like she'd been marked somehow. Claimed. Everyone knew without being told that she was under Adrian Vincenzo's protection now, and that changed everything. She hated it. She loved it. She didn't know what to feel. Her desk was exactly as she'd left it, with one addition. A single white rose in a crystal vase, and a note in sharp, precise handwriting. Welcome back, AV. She touched the petals gently, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. Ms. Carter. Marcus appeared at her desk. Mr. Vincenzo would like to see you. Of course he would. She walked to his office on steady legs this time. No fear, no trembling. Whatever was happening between them had shifted, and she needed to understand what it meant. Marcus opened the door for her, and she stepped inside. Adrian stood at the windows again, looking out at the rain-soaked city. He turned as she entered, and his gaze went immediately to her face, cataloging the fading bruise with an expression she couldn't read. "Better," he said quietly. "It's healing. Good." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit, please." She sat. He remained standing, studying her with an intensity that made her skin warm. "Derek left the city," he said finally. "Saturday morning. He won't be back." "How do you know?" "Because I have people making sure of it. If he so much as buys a bus ticket back to this state, I'll know about it within the hour." Emma should have been disturbed by that. By the reach of his power, the casual way he surveilled someone's entire life. Instead, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. "Thank you," she said. "Don't thank me for doing what should have been done the moment he first raised his voice to you." Adrian moved to sit on the edge of his desk, closer to her now. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "All right." "Why didn't you come to me sooner? When he first started scaring you, why didn't you say something?" The question surprised her. She looked down at her hands, folded in her lap. "Because you're my boss. My personal problems aren't your concern." "Everything about you is my concern." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. "Why?" she asked, finally meeting his gaze. "Why do you care so much?" "I'm just an accountant. You have hundreds of employees. You think that's all you are to me?" His voice was low, almost dangerous. "You think I personally handle the security concerns of all my accountants? That I have my people watch over them at night? That I lose sleep over their safety?" Her pulse quickened. "Then what am I to you?" He stood, closing the distance between them. Emma had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact as he loomed over her, one hand reaching out to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. "You're the first person in 10 years who's looked at me without fear or greed," he said softly. "You're brilliant and careful, and you have no idea how rare that combination is. You're someone who tried to protect her abuser from me, even though you knew I could help you, because you didn't want blood on your conscience. You're fascinating and frustrating, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since the day you walked into my office for your interview and told me my filing system was inefficient." Emma's breath caught. "I was so sure you were going to fire me for that." "I almost did. Then I realized you were right, and I decided I needed to keep you instead." His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, just below the fading bruise. "I want you, Emma. Not just as an employee. I want you in my life, in my world. I want to know everything about you. I want to be the person you call when you're afraid. I want to be the one who protects you, who makes you smile, who gets to fall asleep next to you." Her heart was racing so fast she felt dizzy. "You're my boss." "Then quit." "What?" "Quit. Right now. I'll write you a recommendation that will get you hired anywhere in the city within a week." His hand moved to cup her jaw, tilting her face up toward his. "Or stay, and let me make you a partner instead of an employee. Let me give you a stake in this company, real power, real influence. Let me stand beside you as an equal, not as your employer." "Adrian, that's insane. You can't just—" "I can. I will. Tell me what you want, Emma. Tell me what it takes to make this right, to make this possible. I'll do anything except pretend I don't feel this way." She searched his face, looking for deception, for manipulation. But all she saw was raw honesty. Dangerous, intense, overwhelming honesty. "I don't know how to navigate your world," she whispered. "The violence, the danger, the constant threat. I'm not built for that. You're stronger than you think. You survived an abuser trying to break you and still showed up to work with your head held high. You stood up to me when no one else would dare. You're exactly the kind of person who thrives in my world. What if I can't? What if I try, and I fail, and... He kissed her. It was gentle at first, questioning, giving her every opportunity to pull away. But when she gasped against his mouth instead, when her hands came up to grip his suit jacket, he deepened the kiss. His hand slid into her hair, tilting her head to the angle he wanted, and Emma felt herself melting into him. This was insane. This was her boss. This was the most dangerous man she'd ever met. This was also the safest she'd ever felt. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. His forehead rested against hers, his eyes closed. "I'll wait," he said quietly. "However long you need. I'll wait until you're ready, until you trust me, until you know this is what you want. But Emma, I need you to know that I'm not going anywhere. I'm not him. I will never hurt you. I will never make you afraid. And I will destroy anyone who tries." She believed him. That was the terrifying, exhilarating truth. She believed every word. "I need time," she said, "to process this, to figure out what I want. Take all the time you need." He pressed a kiss to her forehead, achingly gentle. "But take it knowing that I'm already yours. However this ends, whether you choose me or not, you're under my protection for life. That doesn't change." Emma nodded, not trusting her voice. "Go," he said, stepping back. "Take the rest of the day. Think, and when you're ready to talk, you know how to reach me." She stood on shaky legs and walked to the door. Her hand was on the handle when she stopped, looking back at him. He was watching her with such intensity, such barely restrained hunger that it took her breath away. "Adrian? Yes?" That filing system, it really was inefficient. The smile that crossed his face was genuine and unexpected and absolutely beautiful. "I know, you fixed it. You fix everything you touch." She smiled back, something warm and bright unfurling in her chest, and left. 3 days later, Emma sat in her apartment with a glass of wine and a decision to make. Her phone, both of them, sat on the coffee table in front of her. Her personal phone showed a message from her mother asking how she was. The phone Adrian had given her showed nothing but that single contact. AV. She'd spent the past 3 days thinking, researching, trying to understand the full scope of what being with Adrian Vincenzo would mean. His business empire was vast and complicated. Legitimate holdings mixed with gray areas, legal enterprises funding operations that existed in the shadows. He'd been investigated 7 times in the past decade. Nothing had ever stuck. He was too smart, too careful, too protected by layers of lawyers and loyal employees. He was dangerous, powerful, ruthless when necessary. He was also the man who'd sent Marcus to check on her apartment security after that first night, who'd had flowers delivered to her mother's hospital room when Emma mentioned her mom was having surgery, who'd noticed when she worked through lunch and had meals sent to her desk without comment. He saw her, really saw her, and instead of using that knowledge to control her, he'd used it to care for her. She picked up the phone he'd given her and pressed call. "Emma," his voice was warm, pleased. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine, I've been thinking." And I have conditions." She heard the smile in his voice. "I'm listening." "First, I want that partnership you mentioned. Equal stake, equal say. If I'm going to be in your world, I want real power in it. Done. Second, I need you to be honest with me. Always. About your business, about the dangers, about everything. No protecting me from the truth. I can do that. Third, if this relationship ends, I want a guarantee that I can leave safely. No retaliation. No making me disappear. No using your power to destroy my life." There was a pause. "That's the one condition I can't give you." Her heart sank. "Adrian, let me finish. I can't promise not to use my power to protect you if you leave, because I will always protect you. What I can promise is that if you want to leave, I'll let you go. No forcing you to stay, no manipulation. You'll be free to walk away, But you'll still be under my protection, whether you want it or not, because that's who I am. I can't turn off caring about your safety just because you're no longer mine." Emma closed her eyes. It wasn't the answer she wanted. It was also somehow exactly what she needed to hear. "Okay," she said softly. "Okay." "Is that all your conditions?" "No. One more." "Tell me." "I want you to teach me how to be strong in your world. How to protect myself. How to be someone who belongs at your side, not just someone you have to protect." "Emma." His voice had gone rough with emotion. "You already belong at my side. You already are strong. But if you want to be stronger, I'll teach you everything I know." "Then I have my answer." "And what answer is that?" She smiled, even though he couldn't see it. "Ask me again, what you asked me in your office." She heard him stand, heard movement on his end of the line. "Where are you?" "Home." "Stay there. I'm coming to you." "Adrian, you don't have to—" "I'm coming to you," he repeated, and there was something in his voice that made her shiver. "And when I get there, I'm going to ask you properly." He hung up. Emma stood, her heart pounding. She looked at herself in the mirror. The bruise was almost gone now. Just a faint shadow that would disappear completely in a few more days. She looked different somehow. Stronger. Surer. 20 minutes later, there was a knock at her door. She opened it to find Adrian standing in her hallway, still in his suit, his hair slightly disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. He looked at her like she was water, and he'd been dying of thirst. "Hi," she said, suddenly shy. "Hi yourself." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. Then he took her hands in his thumbs brushing across her knuckles. "Emma Carter, will you let me be yours? Will you be mine, not just in private but in public? Not just for now, but for as long as you'll have me? Will you build an empire with me, rule beside me, be my partner in everything?" She looked up at him. This dangerous, powerful man who was asking her permission, who was offering her everything. "Yes," she said. "Yes to all of it." He kissed her then, deep and claiming, and Emma felt something click into place. This was right. This was home. This terrifying, exhilarating, impossible thing was exactly where she was meant to be. When they finally broke apart, he pressed his forehead to hers. "I have something for you." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small box. Emma's breath caught. "It's not what you think," he said with a slight smile. "Not yet, anyway." "Open it." She did. Inside was a key. "To my penthouse," he explained. "Move in with me. Or don't, and keep your own space. Either way, you have access to everything I have, everything I am." Emma looked at the key, then at him. "This is fast. I don't do anything halfway, Emma. When I want something, when I know it's right, I don't waste time. But we'll move at whatever pace you need. The key is yours, whenever you're ready to use it." She closed her fingers around it. "What if I'm ready now?" His smile was brilliant. "Then I'll have Marcus bring your things tomorrow. I can pack my own things. You'll supervise while he packs them. That's the compromise." She laughed, and it felt good. Easy. Right. You're impossible. You love it. The words hung between them, and Emma realized he was right. She did love it. Loved his certainty, his intensity, his absolute refusal to be anything other than exactly who he was. "I'm going to fall in love with you," she said quietly. "I think I'm already halfway there." "Good." He cupped her face in his hands, his touch achingly gentle. "Because I'm already completely gone for you. Have been since you told me my filing system was inefficient." She rose on her tiptoes and kissed him, pouring everything she felt into it. All her fear and hope and trust and desire. When she pulled back, his eyes were dark with want. "Stay tonight," she whispered. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." He smiled and kissed her again, and Emma let herself fall into it. into him, into this new life that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Later, much later, as they lay tangled together in her bed, Adrian's fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder, Emma thought about the woman she'd been just a week ago. Afraid, trapped, hiding bruises and hoping things would get better on their own. That woman was gone. In her place was someone stronger. Someone who'd been claimed by a dangerous man and claimed him right back. Someone who'd looked at the darkness and decided to walk into it with her eyes open. "What are you thinking?" Adrian murmured against her hair. "That my life is insane now." She felt him smile. Is that a complaint? No. She turned to face him, finding his gray eyes in the darkness. It's an observation. My life is insane, and I'm with a man who terrifies most people, and I'm about to become a partner in a business empire that probably does illegal things I don't want to know about. And I've never been happier? His expression softened. Emma, I mean it. For the first time in my life, I feel safe, protected, seen. You scare me sometimes, but you've never made me afraid. Do you understand the difference? I do. He pulled her closer. And I promise you, for the rest of our lives, I will never make you afraid. Everything else, the business, the danger, the complications, we'll handle together. Together, she agreed. She fell asleep in his arms, safe and claimed, and exactly where she belonged. 6 months later, Emma stood in Adrian's office, their office now, reviewing quarterly reports. She'd officially become a partner in Vincenzo Holdings 3 months ago, in a ceremony that had been covered by every major financial publication in the country. The speculation had been immediate and vicious. Who was this unknown woman? What did she have on Adrian Vincenzo? Was this a power play? A romantic entanglement? A strategic move? Emma had ignored all of it. She'd learned quickly that in Adrian's world, what people thought mattered far less than what you could actually do. And she could do plenty. She'd restructured their entire financial division, bringing in 20% more profit while staying completely clean legally. She'd negotiated 3 major deals that Adrian admitted impressed him. She'd proven herself over and over until even the most skeptical board members had to acknowledge she'd earned her place. And through it all, Adrian had been beside her, teaching her, supporting her, pushing her to be better while never making her feel insufficient. They'd gone public with their relationship a month after she'd moved into his penthouse. The announcement had caused another wave of speculation, but Emma had handled it the same way she handled everything now, with confidence and absolute certainty that she belonged exactly where she was. "You're smiling," Adrian said from the doorway, and she looked up to find him watching her with warmth in his eyes. "Just thinking." About how much has changed." She set down the reports and walked to him. He pulled her into his arms automatically, and she leaned into his embrace. 6 months ago, I was hiding bruises and hoping Derek would just leave me alone. Now I'm here. Any regrets? Not a single one. She pulled back to look at him. Well, maybe one. Oh? His eyebrow arched. You still haven't told me what happened to Derek. Adrian's expression went carefully neutral. He left the city. That's all you need to know. Adrian. Emma. He kissed her forehead. Some things are better left as mysteries. Trust me on this. She should probably push harder, should demand to know. But in the end, she didn't really want to. Derek was gone. He would never hurt her again. That was enough. Fine, she said. Keep your secrets. Not all of them. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. A different box than the one with the key. This one, I want you to know about. Emma's heart stopped. Adrian. I was going to wait. Do this at dinner, somewhere romantic, make a whole production of it. He opened the box, revealing a ring that took her breath away. A single diamond, flawless and enormous, set in platinum. But I realized I don't want to wait. I don't want romantic restaurants or public proposals. I just want you to know that this is forever. That you're mine, and I'm yours, and I want the whole world to know it. Are you asking me to marry you in our office in the middle of a workday? Yes, he smiled. Is that a problem? Emma laughed, feeling tears prick at her eyes. It's perfect. It's completely insane and perfect. Is that a yes? That's a yes. She held out her hand, and he slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, because of course it did. Adrian didn't do anything that wasn't perfect. He kissed her, deep and thorough, and Emma felt the last piece of her old life fall away. She was his. He was hers. They were building something together that was terrifying and beautiful and absolutely right. When they finally broke apart, she touched his face gently. I love you. It was the first time she'd said it. She'd been waiting for the right moment, and this was it. Standing in their office, wearing his ring, knowing that every day for the rest of her life, she'd wake up next to this man. I love you too, he said, his voice rough with emotion. More than I thought I was capable of loving anyone. You changed everything for me, Emma. We changed each other. Yes. He kissed her again, softer this time. We did. That evening they announced their engagement. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Congratulations mixed with skepticism, genuine happiness mixed with barely concealed judgment. Emma ignored all of it. She stood beside Adrian at the press conference, her hand in his, her ring catching the light, and answered questions with the same confidence she'd brought to everything else in her new life. Yes, their relationship had moved quickly. Yes, she understood what she was getting into. Yes, she was absolutely certain. And when one reporter asked if she was afraid of being with such a powerful, dangerous man, Emma smiled. I'm not afraid of anything anymore, she said. Not when I have him beside me. Adrian's hand tightened on hers, and she saw the pride in his eyes. That night, as they celebrated with champagne in their penthouse, Adrian pulled her onto the balcony overlooking the city. This is all yours now, he said, gesturing to the glittering lights below. Everything I've built, everything I am. It's yours, Emma. She looked out at the city, this place that had once felt so big and overwhelming. Now it felt like home. No, she said, turning to face him. It's ours. We're building this together. Remember? Together, he agreed, and kissed her beneath the stars. And as Emma kissed him back, she thought about the woman she'd been. The one who'd been afraid, who'd hidden bruises, who'd thought she had to handle everything alone. That woman had shown up to work with a black eye, terrified and desperate. This woman, the one wearing an engagement ring, standing on a penthouse balcony, claimed by the most dangerous man in the city, she wasn't afraid anymore. She'd found something she didn't know she was looking for. Not just protection or safety or love. She'd found herself. The strongest version of herself. The woman who could stand beside Adrian Vincenzo and be his equal. And she'd never looked back. By dawn, Derek had vanished from the city, just like Adrian promised. But Emma wasn't thinking about him anymore. She was too busy planning a future with a man who terrified the world, but would never terrify her. A man who'd seen her at her lowest, and decided she was worth everything. She was Emma Vincenzo now, or she would be soon, and the world had better get used to it. The wedding was planned for the first Saturday in December, a small, intimate ceremony at Adrian's estate just outside the city. Emma had insisted on keeping it private, just close friends and family, and Adrian had agreed without argument. He'd given her everything she wanted, from the flowers, to the music, to the menu. 3 weeks before the wedding, everything changed. Emma arrived at the office early, as she always did, her coffee in hand and her mind already running through the day's meetings. She stepped off the elevator and immediately sensed something was wrong. The usual morning energy was absent. People were clustered in small groups, whispering, their faces pale and worried. Sophie stood at her desk, her eyes red-rimmed like she'd been crying. "What's going on?" Emma asked, setting down her coffee. Sophie opened her mouth, closed it, then shook her head. Mr. Vincenzo is in his office. He asked to see you immediately. The ice that flooded Emma's veins was familiar now. She'd learned to recognize the feeling, to use it instead of letting it paralyze her. She walked to Adrian's office with her head high, knocked once, and entered. Adrian stood at his windows, his back to the door. He didn't turn when she came in. "Adrian?" Her voice was steady, even though her heart was racing. "What happened? Close the door." She did, then crossed to him. When she reached him, she saw his reflection in the glass. His expression was carved from stone, his jaw so tight she could see the muscle jumping. "Tell me," she said quietly. He turned to face her, and what she saw in his eyes made her breath catch. Rage. Pure, barely controlled rage, and underneath it, something that looked almost like fear. "There's been a threat," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Against you." The words didn't make sense at first. "Against me? Why would anyone? Because you're mine. Because hurting you is the only way my enemies think they can hurt me." His hands clenched into fists at his sides. "I should have anticipated this. Should have prepared for it. Should have—" "Adrian." She stepped closer, placing her hands on his chest. "Slow down. Tell me what happened." He covered her hands with his, gripping them tightly. "This morning, a package was delivered to the building, addressed to you. Security intercepted it before it reached your desk. What was in it?" His jaw tightened further. Photos. Of you. Leaving our building, getting coffee, shopping. Dozens of them, taken over the past month. And a note. What did it say? It said that you don't belong in my world. That you're a weakness I can't afford. That unless I end the engagement and send you away, they'll remove you themselves. He pulled her closer, his voice dropping to something almost feral. "They threatened to kill you, Emma. To take you from me." She should have been terrified. Part of her was. But the larger part, the part that had grown stronger over the past 6 months, was angry. "Who sent it?" she asked. "I don't know yet, but I will." The promise in his voice was absolute. "And when I find them, they'll wish they'd never heard your name. What do you want me to do?" The question seemed to surprise him. "What do I want you to do?" "Emma, I want you to let me protect you. I want you to stay at the estate where I can keep you safe. I want you to let Marcus and his team watch over you until this is handled." "For how long?" "However long it takes." She pulled her hands free from his, stepping back. "So I'm supposed to just hide? Give up my life, my work, everything we've built together because someone sent a threatening letter?" "This isn't just a threatening letter. These people are serious. They know where you live, where you work, where you shop. They've been following you for weeks and we didn't know." His voice cracked slightly. "If something happened to you because of me, because of my world, I wouldn't survive it." The raw honesty in his words made her chest ache. She crossed back to him, cupping his face in her hands. "Nothing is going to happen to me. You won't let it. You don't know that. You can't promise that. Neither can you. Adrian, listen to me." She waited until his eyes focused on hers. "If I run and hide every time someone threatens me, I'm not your partner. I'm just someone you have to protect. Is that what you want?" "I want you safe." "I know. But I also know that hiding won't make me safe. It'll just make me a prisoner. And whoever sent that package will win, because they'll have proven that I don't belong in your world." She pressed her forehead to his. "I'm not leaving. I'm not hiding. We're going to find whoever did this. And we're going to show them exactly who they're dealing with." Adrian closed his eyes, his hands coming up to grip her waist. "You're going to be the death of me. No, I'm going to be the reason you live." She kissed him softly. "Now tell me what we know and how we're going to handle this." He looked at her for a long moment, and she saw the exact second he made the decision to trust her, to treat her as the equal she'd demanded to be. "The photos were taken by a professional," he said, shifting into business mode. High quality, long-range lens. The note was typed, no fingerprints, no DNA. But the paper is expensive, custom made. Only 3 suppliers in the region carry it. So we start with the suppliers. Already on it. Marcus is pulling their customer lists now. He paused. There's something else. The timing. This comes 3 weeks before our wedding, right when the guest list went out. Emma's mind raced. You think it's someone we invited? I think it's someone who knows about the wedding, which means either they're on the list or they have access to someone who is. That's almost 200 people. I know. His expression was grim. But we'll narrow it down. We'll find them, Emma. I promise you that. She believed him. But she also knew that waiting around for answers wasn't in her nature anymore. I want to help. Absolutely not. Adrian, no. You can be involved in the planning, in the strategy, but you're not putting yourself in danger to draw them out or whatever insane idea is forming in that brilliant head of yours. She wanted to argue, but she saw the fear behind his anger. This was his line in the sand. The one place he wouldn't compromise. Fine, she said, but I want to know everything. No protecting me from the details. Deal. They spent the rest of the morning going through security footage, customer lists, and background checks on every single person who'd been invited to the wedding. Emma's skills with financial records came in handy, tracking suspicious transactions and identifying people who had connections to Adrian's competitors. By early afternoon, they had 3 potential suspects. Richard Castellano, a rival businessman who'd lost a major deal to Adrian 6 months ago. His company was on the verge of bankruptcy, and he'd made public comments about Adrian's inappropriate relationship with Emma. Victoria Ashford, the daughter of one of Adrian's former partners, who'd made it clear she'd expected to be the one wearing Adrian's ring. She had the money and connections to hire professional surveillance. And James Morrison, a former employee who'd been fired for embezzling and had sworn revenge. He'd dropped off the grid 2 months ago, right around when the photos had started being taken. My money's on Morrison, Emma said, studying the files. He has motive, means, and he's desperate enough to do something stupid. Victoria has the connections, Adrian countered, and the jealousy. She called me twice last week. I didn't answer. Marcus appeared in the doorway. We have something. They both looked up. One of the paper suppliers recognized a recent bulk order. 50 sheets of the custom stock, paid for in cash 2 weeks ago. Marcus pulled out his phone, showing them a grainy surveillance image. The buyer was careful, but we got a partial face. Emma leaned forward, squinting at the image. Then her blood ran cold. I know her, she whispered. Adrian's head snapped toward her. What? That's Jennifer, Derek's sister. Emma's hands started shaking. She came to my apartment once, about a year ago. Before Derek and I broke up, she told me I wasn't good enough for him, that I was ruining his life. The silence that followed was deafening. Derek had a sister, Adrian said slowly, his voice deadly calm. And you never mentioned this. I didn't think it mattered. I haven't seen her since that day. I assumed she left when he did. Adrian was already moving, pulling out his phone and making calls. Emma heard him barking orders, demanding information, mobilizing his entire network to find Jennifer Morrison. Morrison, the same last name as James, the former employee. Adrian, Emma said, the pieces clicking together. James Morrison. Derek Morrison. They're related. He stopped mid-sentence, his eyes meeting hers. Then he was back on the phone, his voice even more urgent. Within an hour, they had the full picture. Jennifer Morrison was James Morrison's daughter and Derek Morrison's sister. Derek hadn't left the city like they'd thought. He'd been found 3 weeks ago in a hospital in Queens, beaten so badly he'd been in a coma. He'd woken up 4 days ago and immediately told his sister everything, claiming that Adrian had tried to kill him for dating Emma. Jennifer had taken the information to her father, who'd just gotten out of prison for the embezzlement charges. Together, they'd crafted a plan for revenge. Jennifer would stalk Emma, gathering photos and information. James would use his knowledge of Adrian's business to identify the perfect moment to strike. And Derek, still recovering but filled with rage, would be waiting for his chance to take Emma himself. "They're planning to take her during the wedding," Marcus said, reviewing intercepted communications. "They know security will be focused on the perimeter. They're going to grab her during the ceremony and use her as leverage." Emma felt dizzy. "Derek is here? In the city?" "Not for long," Adrian said, and the cold promise in his voice made her shiver. "Marcus, I want all 3 of them found. Tonight. I don't care what it takes." "Adrian, wait." Emma grabbed his arm. "We need to be smart about this. If we just grab them, there could be others involved. We need to make sure we get everyone." He looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "They were planning to kidnap you at our wedding." "I know, and we're going to stop them. But we're going to do it right." She turned to Marcus. "Can we set up surveillance on all 3 of them without them knowing?" Marcus nodded slowly. "It's possible." "Then that's what we do. We watch them, we identify anyone else involved, and then we take them all down at once." She looked back at Adrian. "No one escapes. No loose ends." Adrian stared at her for a long moment. Then, impossibly, he smiled. "You really are terrifying. I learned from the best." They spent the next week watching the Morrisons. Emma insisted on being part of it, despite Adrian's protests. She sat in surveillance vans, reviewed hours of footage, and helped piece together the full scope of the plan. It was worse than they'd thought. James had recruited 3 other former employees, all with grudges against Adrian. Victoria Ashford was involved too, providing funding in exchange for a promise that Emma would be publicly humiliated. And Derek had been in contact with 2 of Adrian's competitors, promising them inside information if they'd help him destroy Adrian's relationship. It was a web of revenge, jealousy, and greed, all centered on removing Emma from Adrian's life. The night before the wedding, Adrian's team moved. It was coordinated and precise. All 9 conspirators were picked up within a 30-minute window before any of them could warn the others. They were brought to a warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The same warehouse where Derek had been taken that first night 6 months ago. Emma insisted on being there. Adrian tried to stop her, but she was immovable. "They came after me because they thought I was weak. I need them to see that they were wrong." So she stood beside Adrian as the conspirators were brought in one by one, their faces ranging from defiant to terrified as they realized the scope of what they'd walked into. Derek was last. He looked terrible, still healing from the beating he'd received months ago, his face twisted with hate as he saw Emma standing next to Adrian. "You did this to me," he spat. "You and your rich boyfriend." Emma stepped forward before Adrian could stop her. She walked right up to Derek, close enough to see the fear hidden beneath his bravado. "You did this to yourself," she said quietly. "The moment you raised your hand to me, you sealed your fate. Everything that happened after was just consequences. I loved you." "No, you didn't. You wanted to own me. There's a difference." She gestured to Adrian. "He showed me what real love looks like. Protection without possession. Power without abuse. Everything you could never be." Derek lunged for her, but he barely moved an inch before Marcus and 2 other men had him restrained. Adrian appeared at Emma's side, his hand settling on the small of her back. "You all made a mistake," he said, his voice carrying through the warehouse. "You thought Emma was my weakness. You thought hurting her would destroy me." He pulled Emma closer, his arm wrapping around her waist. "But you were wrong. She's not my weakness. She's my strength. And by coming after her, you didn't hurt me. You just signed your own fates." What happened next, Emma didn't watch. Adrian led her outside, back to the car, while Marcus and his team handled the details. She didn't ask what would happen to the conspirators. She didn't need to know. All she needed to know was that they wouldn't be a threat anymore. The wedding took place the next day as planned. The sun broke through the December clouds just as Emma walked down the aisle, her hand tucked into her father's arm, her eyes locked on Adrian waiting for her at the altar. He looked at her like she was everything, like she was the sun and the moon and every star in the sky. And when she reached him, when she placed her hand in his, she felt complete. The ceremony was beautiful and simple. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves, promises of partnership and protection, of honoring each other's strength and supporting each other's growth. When Adrian slipped the wedding band onto her finger, his hand was steady. When Emma did the same for him, hers was too. "I love you," he whispered, just loud enough for her to hear. "Forever." "Forever," she agreed. They kissed as husband and wife, and the small gathering of trusted friends and family erupted in applause. At the reception, Emma danced with her father, who whispered that he was proud of her, that he'd never seen her so happy. She danced with Marcus, who told her she'd earned the respect of every person in Adrian's organization. She danced with Adrian's mother, who welcomed her to the family with tears in her eyes. But most of all, she danced with Adrian. They moved together like they'd been doing it for years, perfectly in sync, perfectly matched. "Any regrets?" he asked as they swayed to the music. Emma looked up at him, at this man who'd turned her world upside down and made it infinitely better. "Not a single one. You. Only that I didn't find you sooner. We found each other exactly when we were supposed to." He pulled her closer, and she rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. 6 months ago, she'd been a woman hiding bruises and hoping for a way out. Now she was Emma Vincenzo, partner in a business empire, wife to the most powerful man in the city, and the strongest version of herself she'd ever been. She'd walked into Adrian's world expecting to be consumed by it. Instead, she'd conquered it. And as they danced beneath the lights, surrounded by people who loved them, Emma knew with absolute certainty that this was just the beginning. There would be other threats, other challenges, other people who thought they could tear them apart. Let them try. She and Adrian were unbreakable now. Together, they could face anything. And they would, for the rest of their lives. Forever.